Alright, final poem we're going to look at, which is Beach Burial. It's one of his last poems, and it was written as a war correspondent when he was in El Alamein during World War II, which is in the north of Africa. It's about him watching sailors from ships that were torpedoed by the Germans floating to shore like driftwood, like tidewood, and then they were buried in the beaches afterwards. It was almost a case of dragging the bodies from the beaches and burying them not too far away from them. It's sort of this very interesting kind of poem in a number of senses. It uses, first of all, this very calming and yet very horrific image of dead sailors coming to shore. It's sort of calming in the sense that they seem very peaceful, and yet at the same time we get this image in our head of, well, hang on, they're not bits of wood, they're bodies. They're people who have died, had a horrific death drowning at sea, and now are being washed ashore. The sand joining them is friend and foe, so not only the Allies being sort of drifting to shore, but also the enemy soldiers as well. And then being buried together, this exposed nature of death is, not only are they sort of naked, they're quite exposed to the fact that they're not really anything anymore. They're just different bodies, and they might as well, as much as it might sound horrible, be faceless and nameless, even though they are genuine people. And it's a really horrible, sort of horrific image that sort of really communicates quite deeply the nature of war, how all these bodies sort of washed ashore hopelessly and helplessly. They've been killed, and certainly in many cases they're almost unidentifiable. It really creates that strong image of not only horror that we get out of it, this nature of war. It's also quite unique in that it uses a very structured style. It has a 4-line stanza. It seems to have these various sort of conceits in them, which is in stark opposition, should I say, to a lot of his very free-form poetry, which we often see from Slessor. It's considered to be one of the reasons why Slessor gave up poetry at the end of World War II, was the fact that he felt it was too structured, and he found himself sort of falling into these habits of incorporating structure. And we certainly see some of that in this poem, in that we get a very sort of sincere structure, and we get a number of different sort of impressions from each line and each bit, so we really get a beginning, a middle and end to this poem. So it's a narrative, but it's a very structured sort of narrative, which, as I said, is quite distinct, and particularly compared to the rest of his poem.